Good morning, Mike. How you doing? Happy
With my
Thursday.
coffee, always
With your
ready
coffee.
for you, Steve.
I know, I
Yes,
know.
good morning to you.
I try to time it that way, you know. I just find
Perfect.
it's a lot better for me. I enjoy it a lot more when the disruption is you and that's what your thing is. And I was actually looking
Yeah,
back, you're funny you say that. I was actually looking back in a number of videos actually whenever YouTube takes the snapshot for the actual thumbnail and
yeah.
how many times you're like this.
I was gonna say, it's a good chance.
It
There's a
is
good
quite
chance if they're
funny.
taking a
It
snapshot, it's
is
gonna
quite
have me
funny.
with a
It
coffee.
is. It is. It
I
is.
need it. It's essential fuel for the morning. And
Especially.
the other thing you're gonna catch me doing is this a lot. I think that's the other thing you're gonna start seeing as this hair continues to grow out of control. Look at this. I don't know what to do. I got
Wow.
the appointment scheduled for next week if it holds up. But maybe I should just
I
go with the
love it.
80s look, you know?
I love
Flock of
it.
seagulls. You remember the flock of seagulls?
I remember a little bit about that, but not too much. Not too much. But what I will say is, like, I'm surprised you did that because I know how meticulous you are in your preparations for this before we go live. So, well done
It's
you
I've given up. I've
for
given
being
up.
that guy today.
Yeah,
It's
can't do it.
appreciated. It is. It is. It is.
Your hair
So,
looks good as usual today.
well,
Congratulations.
I thank you. I appreciate it. I spend a lot of time
Yeah,
on this.
I bet.
You may not think it, but there is time and thought put into this each and every morning.
Mm,
But anyway,
no doubt. No
anyway.
doubt.
So Mike, May 14th. You know what day it
Yes,
is?
sir.
It's Chicken Dance Day. Who
All
knew?
right.
Who knew there was a day for the chicken dance, huh? So there you
Let's
go.
do
If
it.
only you were doing your live show, you could get everybody up and do the chicken dance.
Absolutely. That's
So there
exciting.
we go. There we go. Something
I
to sort of think about as
don't
we
know
go.
what's the chicken dance song. I don't even
Yeah, I can't
remember
remember.
I was
I
doing
can't remember.
the Pee Wee Herman tequila song.
Yep.
But that's not the chicken dance. The chicken dance is
I don't know, man.
I don't even remember. I can't get the melody. I know
I
it's
mean,
out there.
if
We'll have
if
to.
if I was a professional, Mike, I would have had it teed up for us to sort of play just as I sort of mentioned it, and then
Yeah.
we could have just went into it. But that's just not who I
Then
am,
you have
or
to pay YouTube all those licensing fees. We don't want that. So
that's
we
true.
don't want to
That's
have any
true.
problems there.
We don't have any problems with that. But
So
so
middle of
yeah,
May. Wow, we're halfway through another month.
yeah, man, yeah,
Crazy,
yeah.
right?
Just going by so fast, so fast, and you
It's
did your
picking
live
up.
stream
Speed is
yesterday,
picking up.
right?
I did, and it was a good one. It was one of my favorites. Again, they're all favorites. They're like hard to remember them all and hard to rank them. But yesterday I knew it was going to be good. I was expecting it to be a really comfortable chat, a really transparent, honest discussion with two friends because I know Jeff Snavely very well. Obviously, he's been a long time contributor to the podcast, and my other guest was another friend from the Capital Chapter of IFMA who I've been seeing on these happy hours, these virtual gatherings we talk about. She's our president-elect here at the local chapter. So having Kelly Johnson and Jeff Snavely on, along with Maddie, of course, and our audience, we've got a regular a crew that rolls in each time we go live, and it's so nice and refreshing to. We got to find a better tool for it because we're using the GoToWebinar, tool.
Hmm.
And I said from day one that it's not a webinar; it's an interactive conversation. And they have the ability to send in questions that we use to have conversations. And there's a lot of that going on yesterday. So interesting discussion around trust. We alluded to it yesterday, and that went well. And also came up against some, controversial moments, I would say, as far as it can be frustrating to understand other perspectives. Why wouldn't you wear a mask? Why aren't you keeping the physical distancing? Why not just help each other by following some of these protocols? And depending on who you trust for your information, which media source, which leader you're listening to, do you trust the leaders that are telling us what we need to do? There's a disconnect there for our society, and I think that's always been the case. But in these times of need for thinking of others first and putting others first, I don't blame the people. I know there's some people that are just bad folks, but for the vast majority of people that maybe aren't following the protocols, it's because they haven't been informed properly. It hasn't been communicated well as far as why we need to do things we do. So trust is a part of that, and trusting the messenger and getting that information is something we need to do a better job of. So I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I think it's going to really come into play as we enter the workplace again and have to bring our colleagues back, one of the questions we ask is, do you think your coworkers will follow the safety protocols to make you feel comfortable? And thankfully, the answer was like 80-20. 80% said yes. I think we have a cup is half full optimistic view, and especially if you're part of a culture and an organization that you think values the same things you do, if you're working in some place like that, you're going to think, yeah, I would hope so. And of course, Kelly works for the American Association of Medical Colleges, so she's working with a community of scientists and people who get the seriousness of this virus and the need to follow these procedures. So she's pretty confident that it's going to be a good situation in her workplace when they go back. But that 20%, there's a concern. It's kind of like the experience we have at the grocery store. There's at least that many people who just aren't, showing the respect, I call it, of wearing a mask for others, not for yourself, not to protect yourself, but to protect others, and not keeping the distance, reaching over and grabbing that can of soup while you're trying to, navigate the aisle. So how did I get down this path? But it's what's on my mind, and it's something that I think we need to talk about as we continue this conversation about the return to the workplace.
No, I totally agree with you. And I think a lot of it's not organizations, governments, states, cities are going to help organizations by actually providing very clear guidance. So what I've sort of witnessed, and I'm sure you're hearing the same thing, states are being very clear of what is needed or required for you to open up your business so that people can come in, right? And a lot of them are actually stating you need to wear a mask, you need to provide A, B, C, and D to ensure that people are safe and feel safe, and almost putting the responsibility, it's not putting I don't see it as putting a responsibility onto the employer. I think it's helping the employer convey a message to the employee, and it just helps that whole trust thing, right? Because in essence, the state or cities think about every employee who's going to be accessing a workplace at the same time. So how they're going to be commuting, how they're going to be traveling to and from work. If everyone's abiding by the same principles, the same philosophies, the same trust, then I think it helps everybody navigate through the streets of whatever city people are going to be operating in. Then it helps the employer, it helps the employee. One, understand the employee feels, okay, I go into the office, I know what to expect because these are the standards that are being set. It helps the employer going, well, we're going to abide by the local rules, CDC guidance, and it actually helps them then communicate this is what it's based on. And I think if there is that clear communication, we always go back to the other side of what you said and what Jonathan Schultz started with when all this started, when we first locked down. It's trust and transparency, that communication, and as everyone knows what that level playing field is, I think it helps everybody. But what I did want to go through with today, and I want to sort of change it up a little bit for
Sure.
you and I here. And as we think about the office and we talk about going back to the office and we sort of look back at what the office was for you and I understand, like obviously you work for a home a lot, you travel a lot to conferences, you're a big ticket item, as I always say. You sell a lot of tickets, Mike.
Please. Not
And
sure about that.
whenever you go into your office in Houston, it's kind of like what I want to try and do is for you and I to sort of think about the little things that we miss about being in the office. Now, I'm not talking about sort of saying, oh, I miss my colleagues, but what actual aspect of it is there certain things that, the little nuances that we sort of miss as whenever we're in the office. And I was sort of as I was laying this up and sort of thinking about this. I mean, I can kick it off, and then you can
Yeah,
jump in.
please.
And obviously for me, part of it is I miss the jovial side or the rib taking that the team have. So in essence, that's quite, although you get a little bit of it on Zoom, but sometimes there's sad conversations happening in your team that you're not hearing, you're not part of the conversation, but you're hearing the conversation. And all of a sudden you get to dive in and you get to have that little bit of fun. I'm a very jovial person. I like to make fun of other people. That's just what makes me laugh. And trust me, I get it back as much as I give it. But in essence,
Yep.
that's the sort of thing that I really miss. Those really informal, comical moments that actually allows people just to have that little bit of fun. And that's one of the things that I'd miss. So I want us to try and go through how many of these little things can we come up with over the next, 10, 15 minutes or so we sort of think about this.
Well,
Are you having?
that's an easy one. That's the first one is the human side and the joking and the camaraderie that is something you don't really plan for, or you can't script out, you can't
Right.
schedule those types of interactions. So when I visit Houston, you mentioned that, that's my only real experience in a physical office with my colleagues, and it's those conference room meetings or it's the offsite meetings where we'll do it at a co-working space and just gather together, and we're all in the same place, and it's throughout the day, and there's different things going on, but there are those times of break, and there's times of eating lunch together. That's something I'm going to miss a lot. I'm trying to imagine, some of those challenges and hurdles of bringing in lunch, for example, from
Yeah.
even something as simple as like a local deli or a Panera or something, where they bring in a bunch of sandwiches and chips, and it's all in those packages. And will people feel comfortable first letting them through the door, and then also, distributing them and dealing with them? But I hope that, I know the restaurant industry is doing a lot to try to overcome the hurdles of this pandemic and touchless delivery and all these things, that touchless ways of creating some kind of a safety bubble around delivery and things like that. So if we could bring in the food, and if, people, that's why people go to restaurants, right? It's not just the food, it's for the experience. So the experience of the office is something that when I go, it's a unique time of interaction, and again, I don't know the day to day. I'm really curious to know more about your thoughts of. It sounds like obviously the joking and just some of that camaraderie that's built through unplanned conversations and interactions is the key. But what else do you miss when it comes to being in that office on a regular basis? Because I don't have a good point of
Mm.
reference for that. I don't go to a space, or even even when I go in and find a space to work, it's usually some open desk, or it's a huddle room or something. I'll put my laptop down in. I never have my own space when I go to visit my offices. So what is your situation when you go into the workplace? Do you have your own assigned desk, or
Yeah.
does it change up each week?
No, I have my own assigned desk, so I sit
Okay.
obviously with the team, and then there are other teams that sit within the finance department that sit around us. So we get to hear and interact with other departments that maybe today, I mean, there's many I haven't really had that many conversations with, where when you're in the office, you'll have that little joke is, whether you hold the door open for somebody or somebody doesn't hold the door open for you, and you get to know those personalities of it becomes a joke of how people behave like that, and it almost becomes part of your daily routine. Just those little things as you think about it, I just think about the people who I may open or may not hold the door open for, and it's when I don't hold the door open, it's because specific reasons, because we've had jokes about that in the past. But it's just
Yeah.
those little nuances that sort of bring a little smile as I think about it right now. I'm just
Sure.
starting to laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also whenever you're having a conversation and it's like something like it's completely random where your team's relaxed. You're not specifically talking or planning to do something, but actually that informal conversation leads to let's go into a room here and whiteboard this because I think this is interesting, and then you just see an idea cultivate and progress. Those
Hmm.
sort of random things, or walking through the office and someone you haven't seen in a while. Maybe they're from out of town. Maybe they're sitting on a different floor you may not bump into, and it's just like, oh, let's go grab a quick cup of coffee. What's going on with you? And how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's the family? And it's those little conversations, and it's sort of a lot of those informal things. I think the formal things that we're doing today are okay. We're
Yeah.
progressing, we're getting work done that needs to be done. It's the informal social interaction that's actually that little bit more challenging. And obviously, there's many ways teams, organizations are setting time up to do a lot of those different things, right? The happy hours. I mean, you're part of many of them, and I just think you must be very happy at the end of every day, Mike. The money you could visit, you go to. But
I
but you,
I was gonna say I had one yesterday. We celebrated World FM Day
yeah, yeah.
yesterday, and there was a happy hour for it. But I drank my coconut water. There was no liquid joy happening yesterday, and I'm glad there wasn't, because it turned out we did a scavenger hunt as part of the fun of the
Ah,
happy hour. Have you done one of these yet, where they
no.
send you throughout your house looking for certain items
Ah,
to
okay.
create like a bingo board, and if you get
Ah,
a certain 5 items, you can actually win
nice.
the game. But I was running up and down stairs, and I'm running throughout the house. And if I had had a glass of wine, I probably would have tripped over myself. But no, it was a fun time. But you're right. You have to balance this new. normal of interaction with your for your health and safety in these situations. But back to what you're saying about the people coming in from out of town and you catching up, I just kind of my brain lit up because I don't think of it that way, and I'm realizing that even though I'm not missing the office because I don't go there very much anyway, I was telling you I miss those opportunities to go and connect. I also was reminded just from what you said that I go through and I see all these faces that I would never normally see in my routine. People outside of my marketing team, the sales folks and the folks in accounting. And when I joined iOffice 2 years ago, it was a very intimate, small company. We had this really cool office. It was very creative. It was in an old condo building. It was like almost walking into a home setting. So it was very open space. And you'd see as I walked in the door, I was greeted by our accounting team, and I walked through the account managers. I'd walk back to the developers and say hi to them. In this Zoom world, there's no reason for me to meet with the developers, directly, and there's no reason for me to meet with accounting via Zoom. But I see my marketing team a lot, and I think, oh, I don't miss that necessarily, but I do miss those kind of broader interactions with the folks that I don't see anymore because I don't have the walkthrough the
Hmm.
office, and in the new space, we have a new headquarters building in Houston. It was much more formal. It's a more traditional office setting, but I'd walk through the corridors, or I'd go to the break room, and that's another thing you missed. Do you miss anything in your break room in particular? Did you have a decent coffee maker or tea or any other amenities that you miss that you don't have at home necessarily, or it's different, feels different?
It's a great question. I mean, one of the wonderful things we have is a fantastic view of the city. So we're on the 49th floor. We have this open area. You sit in the window and you look uptown Manhattan. On a day like today, when the sun's shining, it's absolutely beautiful, and that's one of the best things. And I'm fortunate my desk actually sits where that's my view out the window. So it's
Wow.
somewhat different where I'm sitting today, obviously, but it's a beautiful view. Absolutely,
There's an
and
energy from that, right?
yeah, no,
There's an
there
energy you
is.
get just from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing you kind of miss is like when we bring guests into the space or visitors come into the office from another office, that's they're just drawn to this window where you're just looking up, the camera comes out and people want to take pictures. It's so beautiful. And
Wow.
then when you talk about coffee, yeah, we've I mean, like every organization, right? We know the importance of coffee and tea to our employees, right? And we find it was the number one productivity factor. So we have to provide really good coffee. And yes, we absolutely upgraded our coffee machines just to provide people with all the bells and whistles of how they want the coffee, the frappuccino, the cappuccino, all those different things. So we provide a lot of those things, and it's like, yeah, I'm just like, it's funny. It's as we talk through this, and you sort of take your day and you walk through, and you see those different activities you do in the office, and it just like brings so many different things back.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's a sad thing in the near term anyway. But what do you think we get back to, or do you think we get back to this, and as we're reinventing it, or having this chance to, if we let's keep it positive here and think of it as an opportunity to save all those things that we're missing that are essential. Is it possible in this new frontier, living with COVID, that we get back to that and keep some of those things? And how does that look? Do you let your mind wander into that area yet, or is it still too soon for you to imagine yourself walking back? I know you're preparing all types of spaces and all different geographies for different team members and different roles and responsibilities, and that's a conversation for another day. We've had some of those where essential certain people will go back first, and certainly a minimum, with the distancing required, it'll be a smaller crew heading back into offices. And if you're going to reopen offices, some are deciding not to, at least in the immediate future. Did I hear an announcement yesterday? Some Silicon Valley giant said work from home is going to be forever. What was that? Twitter? Who said
Twitter.
that?
Yeah, that's Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who influenced Twitter, tongue in cheek, but yeah, no, it was an interesting statement, right? To actually come out and state that.
What do you
Yeah,
think the motivation there is? What do you think their end game is?
um, you know, I don't think an organization will make a decision that they think is going to be or impact the business in a negative way. So I have to expect, or I believe that they probably are evaluating the activities that people are doing, their productivity levels, the impact it has to the business, and they've come to a conclusion. Um, to then publicly go out and make such a strong statement, I have to imagine that they have all these data points and they've had conversations with teams, and they've also maybe observed over time how their employees were acting anyway. We don't know whether there was a large percentage of their teams were working from home, working remotely prior to the lockdown, or if they were rotating in and out. I don't know enough about the design of the workplace or the work styles that they operated. So you don't know whether actually they were locked in one way and all of a sudden this has provided an opportunity and change of perspective, and that's what's triggered it. I don't know have a definitive answer, but I think those are the key things I think they have to look at. I'm sure they looked at. Um,
I
yeah,
appreciate that perspective and that insight because that's true. As a layperson, you're a practitioner. You're a real estate leader, a finance mind. I think follow the money would be something you would always say, right? It's certainly that what motivates not just individuals but organizations, and what's best for the organization and what's best for the bottom line is going to also ultimately rise to the top at some point. So I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, and that's the other thing too to remember is that different organizations, different cultures, different people are going to have different responses to this. And this is what's the quote? Don't let a good crisis go to waste. So
yeah,
if you had an inkling as a leader of an organization, and I'm not speaking to anybody in particular here, but if you said, hey, we already had too much real estate, or we had too many people committed to our offices, let's rethink this. This is the chance to do that. And um, I wonder, it's funny that today's May 14th, and this is the day we've got the Workplace Evolutionaries
yeah.
conference call releasing the work from home survey results. Kate Lister, I believe,
Hmm.
and others who put that together 2 months ago. I remember that was one of the very first, along with Leisman, one of the very first surveys that went out. I think you took it, I took it, and I was curious to know your take on it. It was very comprehensive, and it was a lot of Q&A around things that I couldn't really relate to because it was trying to compare your previous life, pre-pandemic, then the lockdown life and work from home, and then what you've noticed about the changes in productivity and time saved and what did you do at that time. So they're going to be sharing those results today, and I'm looking forward to that, to hear what they found, and then we'll start to see the broader application of some of that. But it sounds like organizations like Twitter and others are already, analyzing that data and saying, here's what we're going to do. At least that's what our intentions are. So it's an interesting time for sure. How do you
It
feel
is.
as this is your profession, right? This is going to impact you and the world of real estate. It impacts me and my company. And this is what we talk about: workplace, real estate, facility management. All of these industries are being disrupted.
Yeah, and to go back to the Twitter scenario, right? I'm reminded as well of some of the lessons that Christina has been sharing through Open Source Workplace. You know, they have a corporate strategy, they have a workforce plan, and then actually the real estate is a byproduct of those two things. So I have to imagine that they've reevaluated what is their strategy, how are they achieving that strategy, what is the workforce plan, and then the real estate, they've done that evaluation. So there's probably a full circle of activities that have taken place, and obviously this has given them the opportunity for that huge change management process, eliminated it, just made it almost it's just happened because of obviously the situation we're in. But then going back to, okay, so the release of this information is going to be it's going to be really important, really interesting to see what actually comes out of the survey. And what'll be really interesting is, you're right, I think it was almost 2 months ago that it was taking place. I wonder if it was taken again today, how it would change, right? People's
Mm,
perception of what work from home was like then, work from
yep.
home today. And I also then think if we did it again when everyone could go back to the office, how would life change then? And I think there's almost then a fourth one where it's, well, the kids or the family or everyone else is left at home and you're able to work from home and you're own isolated and there's more freedom to move around. What would this survey look like then? And I'm sure Kate and the team will be looking at all these eventualities and will likely be doing this multiple times to sort
Mm.
of get those stories and get that direction, because I think it's a really important for the industry to understand some of those principles. So yeah, it should be interesting today whenever they do release that.
So many moving parts, so
I
many
know.
different perspectives. No one size fits all solution for any of this. So I think you and I and people in our industry have plenty of work to do. There's lots still to be done, and yes, things will change. We have to adapt, but I don't worry about it all becoming irrelevant. Do you? I think that the stuff that we've been talking about is more important than ever, and will be as we head into this new frontier of work and the workplace and the workforce and the built environment, and all of those factors are all going to be important to discuss. So thankful to have people on your platform, Open Source Workplace, and the guests that I've talked to who are all thinking about these things and helping their clients and having these conversations. And there's no rush. That's the thing I took away from Kay Sargent's visit a couple weeks ago. She said, let's just take a breath. Everybody's putting out, and I agree with this. There's so much information being thrown at us. And whether it's webinars and white papers and reports, it's all good. And I'm not saying stop seeking information, but to try to rush to conclusions at this point, it's just too early. Don't you agree? I mean, we just have to
Oh,
take
for
a breath,
sure.
have conversations. That's what I love about my live stream. I love about this interactive OSW daily. It's a conversation. And just from the beginning of this 30 minutes together to the end, I've just thought about so many things I didn't even plan to think about today. So I appreciate that.
No, no, it's great, and that's what I love about doing these, Mike. It's the thoughts that need to go into sort of as we think about this. And yes, we don't script anything, and we don't know where we're going to go. And who knows? Maybe people watching and going, "Man, these two just like repeat themselves every day," But anyway, it's but no, it is. It's important to hear other people's opinions, and that's why I think eventually we'll bring other voices to this show, because in essence it just allows us then to hear other people's opinions, because I think it is important that we do expose ourselves to as many thoughts, ideas as possible, because that allows us then
Yeah.
to form a better opinion. And yeah, that's what I'm really excited to sort of hear from a lot of the influencers who are on Open Source Workplace today. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it. What do you see, as far as, have you heard or have you asked? And this is something I've tried to start asking more often, and I'm just beginning to hear some feedback. But when you ask your audience what they want and what they need from us, is that a question that you're hearing anything, and is it different than it was 3 months ago? And a lot of times I just think we're all guilty of this. We do what we do, whether it's, putting out content or going to the workplace and doing our job each day. And we don't take a breath and stop and say, why am I doing this? Is it still as relevant as it was when I started doing it? And maybe
Right.
I need to change. Have you heard anything from your listeners or viewers or visitors or survey results? Or maybe it's a question you need to ask. Yeah.
No, no, it's a great question, and I haven't specifically asked that question, or perhaps I should. But it's what I find really interesting is the content that people come to look at, how that changes week by week. So when we
Mm,
first went into lockdown, open source workplace traffic dropped dramatically because everyone was looking for work from home content. And I have a little bit on there, but I obviously have a work from home website, and that content went shut up.
yeah.
Then, as we've went through this process about the return to work, that content has then started to peak up again. And it's interesting whenever you see what people are searching. Last week we talked about social media. People concerned about social media, how it affects the employee, how it affects the employer, and it still is ranking quite high. But a lot of things that people are looking at is, can my employer video and record me without my permission. We have an article about that, and a lot of people are searching for that. And you think with the way people are using Zoom, the way people are using all other tools, there is concerns about that. And that's what we sort of see. A lot of people are now looking and searching for hot desking material, right? As we go back to the
Interesting.
office,
Yeah.
what is going to be the principle? Because are we going to assign desk? Are we just going to utilize hot desking desk? Because one, there's nothing on it. People can clean it. You come into the office the next day, you know it's clean. You assign someone a desk, you may come in the next day and go, okay, well, this is an assigned desk. Who's actually going to be using this? Who used it the day before? Who used it last week? As we rotate teams, there may be concerns around that. But again, there's a lot of different ways that to evaluate it and look at these things. So it's going to be interesting to see. But
Yeah. No,
I see where
follow the
over
trends.
time my bell didn't go
Oh,
off
it,
today,
it just
but
went by so fast. I
there
don't
we
even know
go,
what
man.
happened. I
I
didn't even look
know,
at the
I know,
clock. So
I know.
let's get on with our day. But I'll see you Monday. Tomorrow's
Yes,
Friday. I'm going to take a day off. I have a little window of opportunity. So thank you for that. And I'll see you next week. Have a
see
great
you Monday.
weekend and
Take
good
care,
rest of
man.
your time.
You too, man.
Thanks.
Cheers. Take care.